we were just talking about was raising that capital and building that. And you can do that at any given time, you guys, as long as you build the template. So currently what we're working on for you guys right now is we're building you guys like a little investment package example. I know Victor already put one in. We're going to have our own, and you guys are going to have that by next week. The first step of that, though, you guys, is asking for the money in the right way and understanding what you're asking for. And that's done through calculations, understanding the costs, and in figuring out what you need and explaining what the actual investment is. And so what I did for you guys today is I built you an offering calculator to where you guys know what you need to raise, how much you need to raise it for, and then also how to present it to that investor to get a yes, no real quick. And if you guys do this in the right way, you guys, I met with someone right before I went to Australia, very liquid investor, like multi-million dollars. And he's like, hey, I want to invest with you. What do you offer? And so I gave him 3 scenarios. One was for syndication, how that works, what their interest was, what percentage they were going to make, and what their anticipated IRR is, and what they need to do, and the terms of the syndication. The next was on doing a joint venture flip deal that we do with some heavy liquidity investors, where they put up all the capital and then we give them a percentage of the profit. We give them we take 60, they take 40, and we have no debt costs, so it's a benefit to us. And the third is for a mezz, I'm sorry, there's 4. The third was a mezz capital deal. That's where we are raising money from someone. They're getting a set interest, and then they're going to get an equity split. So like on our development projects, we get bank financing for 85% of the project. We have to raise the 15%. That's the purchase price, the construction loan. They give us 85%, and we raise the 15%, or we put it up ourselves. How we raise that is we do it as mezz capital. They get paid a 10% interest on that money, and they get 20% of the profit when we go to sell. And so their anticipated return is roughly 30 to 35%, roughly, depending if there's lift on the values or not. And then the fourth is just straight debt, which is what I really think most people should be pitching, especially when you're just getting started raising money. And that's where you are offering to raise or pay someone an interest rate and maybe even points, so they will fund your deal. Because that is what's kind of happening, I've noticed across, is people are running out of liquidity. And they're running out of liquidity for 2 reasons. Either one, or A, they're having trouble getting that first initial liquidity because they don't have the resume and they're not quite prepared. The second is they're having problems with capital because they're trying to scale. They're buying 1 or 2 projects. It sucks out all their money, and they're drowning in the payments and the projects, and they just need more liquidity to keep them right side. And so that's why it's so important to have access to money. And so what we're going to talk about is how should we raise it. So you guys, there's a million different ways we can do it. We're going to cover a lot of these on this class. I'm going to pull one at a time, saying like mezz capital. How do you structure that? How does it work? But the simplest way to do it is with just straight debt. So I'm going to pull this up right now. Is I prepared a spreadsheet for you guys with a real life example. This is so what this spreadsheet does is it keeps it very organized to where you guys can input all your information, as far as about the property details, what you're going to be purchasing for, your anticipated profit, but then it tells you it gives a clear picture to your private money lender. Because I have people request me on the regular, hey, James, would you fund my deal? And the first thing that they make on a mistake is they don't build the relationship. And you guys, as you want to raise capital, the most important thing is to start building the relationship, not just identifying who lends money and then asking them the question when you need it. It's about identifying who's lending private money and then reaching out to them and going, how can we do some business together? How can we do some deals together? What do you need from me? And let's hop on a call and get to know you. That works much better than just cold calling a lender at that point. Because you also want to know, you want to make sure that this person is dependable. You don't want to have a really good deal that they're telling you they can fund, and then you never even really talked to them and got to know them about what the requirements were. And then you have that deal under contract and you're going to close and you can't close.
And I started flipping 30 houses a year with him as my mentor. And he's still my mentor. So like the way you guys are with James, and I'm sure you see James as your mentor, Richard Bash is my mentor and still is my mentor to this day. I talked to him an hour ago about a couple properties. And what's cool about my relationship with him is, he was the OG investor who then taught me how to be an investor. So essentially I cut him out of the deals, right? Is how most people would think of it. It's not the way he saw it though, because as I was learning, I didn't have a lot of money. So he would then lend me the money, or we would be partners on the deals and we'd go 50-50. So my career I started flipping with him as my partner 50-50. And then after a few years, I said, hey, Richard, I want to do these on my own. And he's like, okay, well, I'll lend you the money. So he still kept himself involved in all the transactions one way or another. So then he became my private money lender. And then, you progress now. And now it's like, I don't need him for money all the time. But depending on how many I'm doing, I'll go, okay, Richard, let me put some of your money to work. I'll put my money to work. And then I'll even leverage to traditional hard money lenders that are larger companies like Anchor Loans or Genesis. And then I also JV with people. So like the one thing that's kind of happened to me is I try never to say no to a deal. And I find a way to do it. So if like one of you have a deal and you want to sell it to me and I don't have enough money for it, or you don't have enough money, and it's like, well, then you bring me on as a partner and then let's do it together. Right. And so now here I am 11 years later, or 12, 13 years later, flipping, a lot. Oh, I had a TV show. I forgot about that. But yeah, that part, that's my least memorable part, is having the TV show on HGTV. It was called Vintage Flip. I did it for 2 years, 2015 to 2018. I did 23 episodes restoring historic houses in Southern California with my wife and I, which was it was a ton of fun. Not something I probably would ever do again because it was a lot of work. You don't get paid very much money and you do not become famous because none of you have fucking heard of me. So it did not work.
So Jesse, let's take a step back for a second. You went from being a broker to you flipped your first house, you made that first big check, and you kind of get hooked. And a lot of us, including we all start in the same spot where like when I started flipping, I was a waiter, was a wholesaler, started making some money, pieced together some cash, bought my first deal. But to get that first deal, I had to put every little penny I could together to get that deal done, right? And get the right leverage set up. And then you get through that one, you get some more money, but then you still want to grow it more and you still are limited on capital, right? You have more than you had, but to scale, it's like, because everyone in the room, as far as I know, they're trying to figure out, well, how do I do more? How do I get bigger? How do I grow this business? Because a lot of, as you get through one deal, you get your cash back, you buy another, but then you're kind of constrained. What was how did you go from flipping one house into going, okay, now I'm running like that? I'm guessing the next big step, the next big step was like you started doing like 3 or 4 at a time, right? And then it's those steps, and then 3 or 4 turns into 10, and then 10 turns into 20. So I kind of want to walk through that with everybody, because I know a lot of it comes down to liquidity. Sometimes it comes down to resources. It comes down to, there's so many things that can impact. And back when you were doing this, the market was not good. There was not a lot of money. There was not money floating around that people wanted to put in real estate back then. So how did you get to that next step from 1 to 3 or 4?
Like, if you default, I don't want to be stuck with 0 and not have anyone to call to take over this property. So that's something I think about when I'm lending somewhere that I don't have boots on the ground already. And then the CMA is really important. All the comparables, and I want to see their last couple of deals. And what was your return? How did it actually play out? And how did that work out? How long did it take? Were you correct on the holding cost as far as, did it take 4 months and you expected 2? Did it take 6 months and you were right on? What did that look like? And why do you underwrite the way that you do? Because to me right now, that's really important, because I think holding costs can eat flippers alive right now. And if you are expecting a deal to take 6 months and it takes 9 because it doesn't sell as fast as you thought, how does that impact your business? And like moving forward, what's that going to look like? So those are some of the things I want to talk to them about kind of right away and talk through to make sure I understand how they're looking at it.
Yeah, and it's important, guys, to have your preset checklist, right? Because vetting your deal as a lender is just as important in vetting your BRRRR property, your fix and flip. Just because you're not operating doesn't mean you shouldn't check it even more. I mean, for me, I actually even go even deeper because in Seattle, I know it really well. And I know if something goes wrong, I can take control of it. But if I'm lending in Arkansas, I don't know a whole lot about Arkansas. I don't know
Yeah.
a whole lot about the market. I don't have the resources. So it's even more important to vet that deal, because if I had to take that over, I'm going to have a lot bigger learning curve there. And a learning curve means I need to spend more, which is going to put me in a riskier position.
Yeah. And I think both from both ends, as the borrower and the lender, one thing that I've done is I've taken some of the information you've given me, and I have, like, there's 12 documents I use, and I wrote them down to make sure, because you need to have your loan agreement or your mortgage, depending on the state, your guarantee agreement, your promissory note. I always have an indemnification agreement and my loan term sheet. So those are my non-negotiables. But for my personal review, I like to have a lending process overview that's kind of just going, like, letting them know from the jump what you can expect if you want to lend from 42 Solutions. I want to have a borrower strategy letter that gives me a detail. I ask a lot of questions about the deal specifically, their background history, and all of that. I have a processing checklist. So that's like, I have a line item of everything I'm going to ask them for. So I like to give them a lot of this information pretty early, to where it's like, this is what you can expect lending from me. And the more deals we do together, the easier it's going to be. But as much as you can consolidate that, if you're a lender and you want to do that, like, I know the exact 12 documents that run my company, my lending business, and what I need to send to the borrower. That just streamlines the process for me and has made it extremely kind of fluid, to where I know what I need to do each step of the way.
Yeah, and I think it's just about systemizing that, just like you would any other kind of business. For kitchens, what are the best ways to reduce costs on a kitchen, on a cost of a rehab? Looking to cut out and allocate my money towards others, suburban mid income residential place compared to a luxury flip. So what Sam's asking is, how do we make a kitchen look awesome but cut it down? What the thing I just mentioned, I know Caitlin will jump on this too, is just doing standard cabinets, mixing in an island. A lot of times we like to pull uppers off and we do floating shelves. That will cut cost on your cabinet costs right there. And then also your backsplash, you can do like a subway tile 2-row throughout as a standard backsplash, like a 4-inch, and then we'll wrap the tile up the where the range is to give it like a wow feature. But then we're spending half the amount on tile. So things like that will go a long ways in your kitchen. But what ideas do you work off of to cut costs on the kitchen reno?
Yeah, I would say definitely the shelving. That's a big one. We're actually even doing that in our 4 million flip, as I'm only doing bottom cabinets and then shelving on the rest. So shelving's a great way to cut cost. Another great thing is even just changing, like if you're doing subway tile, just change the pattern. Put it up and down instead of bricklay it. Or you can have it, like Jimmy said, putting it just where the range is. Another great way to cut costs is if you have to buy appliances, then go and buy showroom appliances. I mean, in Arizona, we have a ton of warehouses that have showroom appliances. They've never been used. They might have a scratch like on the side, and you can get appliances at 1/3 of the cost. So that would cut costs right there pretty easily. And then really just mixing the tones. You could do, maybe flat panel on the back, and then not only have doors on the front where the island is, and not having, have that waterfall edge. Or you can even just have like an X. So that's kind of popular. Or you can put up some paneling on the sides to give it some character. I really love like the fluted paneling. You can go to the Wood Veneer Hub. They have some really great wood paneling, and you just stick it right on. We actually have used it for a fireplace. We've used it for vent hoods. We've used it for everything, and it's pretty fair in price.
Yeah, and another appliance thing that we do all the time, even on our high-end flips or better flips, is we'll spend all, or we find a, Viking knockoff range, which we like Bertazzoni, NXR, where we're spending half the money on the range, and then we just do standard fridge air throughout everything else because people are focused on the range over anything else. So they're looking at that and they don't even really notice the dishwasher, the fridge, and all these other items. And it cuts our appliance cost down by like 50% to 60% every time, just by adding that little decorative, like what Caitlin said, that on sale commercial looking range that looks beefy. The rest can go all totally standard and it will cut cost way down on your appliance sets.
Yes. And the thing is too, is some of those ranges like KitchenAid and that have those industrial ranges, some of them even sell them with the red knobs. So mind wise, it's maybe a Thermador or a KitchenAid, but somebody's mind just instantly goes to, oh, they have a Wolf range. Even though you're not advertising that, it's just a little bit of the mind game when you're selling it, making people think basically something is much higher end than it actually is. Now, if somebody asks, of course, you tell them what the appliance is, but it's kind of one of those eye tricks, basically.
Yeah, and then because the average consumer, and it depends on what demographics and market and the market you're in. Like I would say in Newport Beach, people really understand that stuff, and if you don't put it in, you are toast when you go to resale. But the average consumer in our markets, they understand certain things and then they bypass everything else. That's why we say put the money in the kitchens in the primary, because that's what they're focused on. That's where the selling features are. The rest of it you can kind of cut back. Same with your appliances. You can do it with your cabinets too, like just even upgrading your island and keeping the rest standard. That's their focal point because they see that first. So sometimes we'll upgrade the slabs on our island only and go really standard on the rest of it just to give it that wow feature. And you can cut your cost way down.
One of the other ways that you can get money from something you already have is from the stock market. So if you have a retirement account, like a 401k, you could borrow against it. So you can, if you have a 401k with your job, you can talk to whoever services the plan, and you can usually, I think, get up to like $50,000 to lend, or 50% of whatever you have in your retirement account, and pull that money out, and you're actually paying interest back to yourself. The downside of that is that you're pulling your money out of the stock market, so you're no longer investing that money in the stock market, but now you're investing it into your rental property or whatever you're using it for, and you're paying yourself interest instead of paying the bank interest. Another great way to get a line of credit is if you have a stock brokerage account, and you can actually use that as collateral with the bank to get a line of credit. So the bank will look at your house as an asset and say, I'll give you $100,000 line of credit. They will look at your brokerage account and say, okay, right now you have $100,000. That may fluctuate a little bit, but that is way more liquid than a piece of property. Think how long it takes for a bank to foreclose on a property and to actually go and sell it, and if they'll even make back what they lost on the property. Where your brokerage account, they can just go in and they can take those funds if you default on your loan and they're paid back and they're happy. So you get way better terms, way better interest rate using that. The thing that you got to kind of watch for is as your brokerage account goes up and down, your line of credit also availability also fluctuates with that too. So looking at
yeah, because you guys, what Ashley's kind of talking about, and sorry to interject real quick, she's about as we're getting into real estate, whether it's your first deal or you're getting into a new venture, and or you have multiple stakes and you want to grow and scale, it's about setting that debt up right and bringing in the right partners at the right time. And there's so many different ways, a lot of us, when we're thinking about a deal, it's like, oh, I'm going to bring in a money partner. I'm just going to automatically offer them equity, or I'm going to automatically just give away things. And what Ashley had talked about in her first deal was she gave away a lot to get the traction. And on your first couple of deals, giving away a lot to get the traction is worth it, right? You get the experience, you get the reps, it gives you a resume. But then it's about, okay, I got through that first deal, and she said she would never do that again because she started building the resume. And it's about looking at the full picture and how can you tap different types of access to liquidity, checking on HELOCs, investment accounts, your 401k, your partnership agreements, and then structuring them in the right way that works for your investor, but also for you, because we talk a lot about that. And so, bringing in that private capital, it's not just one bucket. It's not always just a private money lender. There's so many different rocks you can overturn to get access to capital, but it comes down to just putting in the effort and really just thinking about, look at the whole picture. Don't just look at the one thing.
Yeah, and that was kind of like, I was so limited as to how to find money and how to invest for so long that it really took me a while to gain traction because I didn't know of all these other options that were available. The next thing that I wanted to kind of touch on with you guys that has helped me are small local banks. So anytime I get a deal, I literally copy and paste the same email to all of the lenders that I've worked with, and sometimes new ones that I have come upon. So I like to work with small local banks because they have more flexibility and it's not so cut into stone as to the rules they have to follow. So what I'll do is I will literally tell them what I want to do or what I'm trying to do. So I will describe the property. I'll give them the property address. I'll tell them that I want to rehab it, turn it into rental, whatever it is. And then I will ask them to give me what they have available, what their options are. So first, whoever the fastest to apply or like respond to me, I always consider those options first because I don't want to work with a loan officer who isn't responsive because that just delays your whole project. So I just copy and paste the same exact thing. And I never say, I'm looking for your investment loan rates. I'm always just keeping it as open-ended as possible to see how they can get creative and make an offer to me. So one of the best responses I got from a loan officer was before I was actually closing on a line of credit, and so was my business partner. We were doing simultaneous ones, and we were telling the loan officer about this deal. And this is where it all kind of clicked for me to do this, is to just tell them about the deal, not what we want. And he's like, you know what? I actually have, if you're not using a private lender, I can give you this rate, and I can actually give you a line of credit to purchase the property. Or it wasn't even a line of credit, I apologize. It was an unsecured loan for 90 days to purchase the property. And then after you close on the property, you can come and refinance with us. So the bank wrote us a check. We signed documents that this was an unsecured loan. There was no collateral. We didn't own the property yet. They wrote us a check for exactly what we needed at the closing table. And we went and paid for the property. We closed on the property. We got a tenant in place within that week. We put a new fridge in it, and we got the property appraised, and we refinanced with the bank. And they paid off the 90-day loan that we had taken out with them. And there was even some extra where me and my partner, I think, pocketed some cash that we took from refinancing for 80% of the value of whatever it was. But we never would have thought to ask for that. Like, there's so many loan products out there they don't even know about. So if you're asking for something specific, that's where the loan officer may be narrow-minded and just respond to what their options are for what you're asking for, instead of giving them the opportunity to present you with different ideas of what they can actually do for you.
So when you start your property search, are there certain parameters or keywords you use? How do you narrow it down to find a good buy? This is a great question, you guys. We teach this, practice this, because we have to shut down the noise. As real estate investors, there's so much noise out there. There's 100 people out there saying that they're their investment plan is the best thing ever, and you're going to become rich that way. There is hundreds of opinions out there all the time. And at the end of the day, there is no right and wrong. But you do want to narrow that down, including when you start taking that action step and start looking for properties. There is so many houses out there that come to market, or there's so many off-market deals floating around. It's really easy to allocate all your time to those deals, and you'll spend a couple hours like going through this deal, trying to make it work, trying to figure it out. And what happens is you're just not working smart, and then good opportunities are going off all around you. You get something I call deal goggles. You're focused on one deal when there's all sorts of stuff around you. And so it's about, how do you narrow that focus? How do you narrow that search? So what we use, common search things that we're looking for to get us the, good inventory. So as brokers, we buy 20 properties a month on market for our investor clients and ourselves. There is hundreds of properties coming online every day. So how do we know what to search for? It's really about setting up you want to get to know your area. What are the average price points? So how we set up our searches is we look at the average median home price in specific areas. We research that. And then the first thing we do is we put in parameters, anything below 20% below the median home price as a pricing, that automatically comes to us. The other things that we're doing is we have traps everywhere on our searches. A trap is something like if we have a broker that we know that only sells short sales or only sells bank owns, that search is automatically sent to us. So any property that person lists automatically comes to us. We have keyword search terms. So we use investor special, handyman, we use fixer, and you can put those into your search terms so you're only seeing those remarks. As is, that's another search word that we use. But the more granular you get, the more opportunities that will come to you. And so we spend a lot of times researching each specific neighborhood, looking at the median home price of specific price per square foot, and then we set up our searches on a percentage of that median home price, and it works really well. The more clear deal flow you can get, the better. And it's also about, how do you underwrite deals in a 5-minute period to know whether that's the next step. And you guys, that is what we teach at Project Flip and ProjectRE. If you get an opportunity, how do you spend 5 minutes on it so you can eliminate it real quick or take that next step and digging in? And it is a very key component for investors because, again, you don't want to be stuck in the data. Michael, what's going on, bud?
How you doing, sir? Appreciate you taking the time. My question's probably a little weird. When you were starting out, how did you get your wife comfortable with all doing this? Because it's kind of like pulling teeth with mine.
That is a very good question. You know what? I would say, fortunately for me, when me and my wife met basically, or we really started dating was at Red Robin. And so luckily we were both in growth phases. She was going through college. I was going through college. And then, we were both kind of getting to our graduate and getting into our careers. And, I think it was tough a little bit because we were on opposite schedules, but what was even more tough is I was out banging doors till like 10, 11 o'clock at night trying to get a deal done. And that's weird, right? You're out in not the most desirable areas. You're out super late. You're not in the safest areas, and it can be a little bit concerning, right? But trying to think of how I got her comfortable with that. Claire, how did you get comfortable with that? You're on, so you might as well answer
No,
the
I was just thinking about that. Did I really have a choice?
That's valid.
I mean, it was either that or a lifetime of Red Robin, and I got sick of the fries. So I said, go out and pursue this. No, I think, we definitely, those first few years were really hard. And I remember Jimmy, you see him now and he's so tenacious, but I remember him coming home being like, I cannot knock on another door. I can't have the door slammed in my face another time. This is so hard. And that's really where he developed his kind of knack for really talking to sellers, getting to know people. And it took, to be honest, took you a full year, I think, to really develop a strategy where all of a sudden you felt like it was rewarding and it was making you happy and you were getting somewhere. But so, yeah, I guess I've been in it for the long haul.
Yeah, one thing I will say, guys, is to have your partner and your wife, or whoever your partner is, on board. That's important. I will say, me and my wife knows everything about what I'm doing business wise, and she doesn't know the nitty gritty details of every project, but she knows what our goals are, but she also knows about our finances, right? And that's important. And I think that's I guess I'm going to Dr. Phil a little bit, like, to have a relationship, and I truly believe that partners should be on the same finance. They should know about each other's finances, where we're trying to go. And I think that was important as we were trying to grow in life, that it was, we knew we had to put in the hard work up front. And we were also on the same page. Claire is also, we were very smart and will work her butt off. And we were both, when we started dating, we were both going to college full time. We were both working full time. And so we were kind of wired that way already as like students that were working full time. I would say today it's about, we definitely, there has to be more balance. And that just comes to communication, but it comes down to what are those goals, and then clearly explaining those goals and how you're going to get there. I will say she will put me on a shorter leash for work if I'm not really clearly explaining what the goal is. And not only that, she will crack the whip and like, how am I going to get there and what time frame, and if I'm organized. And if I'm not getting approval to do it. So just like you're pitching an investor to raise money for your deal, be organized, have a plan, and then sit down and talk about it, guys. It is really important, because you guys, this business is a grind. It can definitely take it out of you. Like what Claire said, that first year of knocking doors was miserable. You guys, I had no training. I took the opportunity to learn sales and to get into real estate. I took this job. They gave me a stack of leads and said, go get them to sell. I had no idea what a HUD was. I had no idea what a foreclosure was. And I was 22 years old. And not only that, I looked like I was 15. And so I go up on knocking these doors, and they would slam the door on me, scream at me. The first door I ever knocked on, you guys, was probably the worst I had ever been chewed out in my life. And I am a person that likes to be friendly. And I was like, I'm doing this wrong. This job is miserable. And what I had to do, and actually Claire gave me the most impactful thing that changed our whole lives in my life, is because I hit that year mark and I was about ready to graduate college. And I was like, maybe I should get into medical device sales, because this job is terrible. But I still loved real estate. And she told me that you've been doing this for a year. Yeah, you haven't done well. You're flopping out, but you're trying, and you need to commit to it for 6 months and see how it goes. And once I graduated, I had to quit my other distractions. And then it was on me to train myself, implement the system that would work, and adjust my sales. And by her saying that, I literally was going to get a different job. I would not be in real estate today, or I might have been down the road. But by hanging in there and making adjustments, and also getting advice from people around me that I was really relatable with, because one of the issues I was having was I took this job and they were very high energy salespeople that are kind of quick closers. I was trying to match their energy at the door, but that's not how I sell as a person. I think anybody that's even in our class knows I like to educate, give service, understand what people need, and then provide the solution. That's how I sell things, and that's how I like to operate my businesses. By being myself and surrounding myself with people like that, it helped me grow my sales ability. And then I had to learn the basics, because that whole year I was knocking doors, guys, I was kind of learning, but I had to get after. I had to take action. There wasn't YouTube, there wasn't podcasts. It was about finding the information and reading it and going into action. And so, you guys, if you get discouraged, you will get discouraged in this business. Take the action and get yourself out of it, and then just communicate well with the people around you.